Hello, welcome to another edition of Cavs Insider. I'm Dan Labbe. I'll be joined by Chris Fedor in a little bit to talk Cavaliers basketball, of course. The Cavaliers coming off of a road trip where they won 3 of 4 games, beating San Antonio, Dallas, Orlando, losing the final game to Miami, and then, of course, they just got a big win over Brooklyn, beating them by 20-plus points, as they should. I had a chance, though, to look ahead to the Indiana Pacers. The Cavaliers play them on Friday. I talked to Tom Lewis of Indy Cornrows.com. Chris Fedor talked to Joe Vardon, our Cavaliers and LeBron reporter. And like I said, me and Fedor are going to do a little fact or fiction later on. But first, here's my interview with Tom Lewis. All right, I'm now joined by Tom Lewis. He runs the Indy Cornrows blog on SB Nation, covering the Indiana Pacers. Tom, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing well today. Thanks for having me on.
All right, well, the Pacers, not having a Pacers-like year, of course, a lot of that has to do with that injury to Paul George. Let's start there. Is there any chance that Paul George actually makes it back this year? I know it was optimistic not that long ago, and now things seem to have changed just a little.
Yeah, the optimism has waned since he actually started practicing. I'm going to be real surprised if he comes back for anything other than, a few minutes here or there in some meaningless situations. It just seems like anytime you see video of him, regardless of what he's doing, there's a little hesitation in his gait, and it seems like the confidence just isn't there. And, it's one thing for someone to go out and run up and down the court and play basketball after recovering from a broken leg. It's another thing to do it at an NBA level. I think him being able to get to that level this year is going to be a stretch.
How much of the Pacers' record and some of their struggles are related to Paul George not being there, and how much would you say is related to just kind of other stuff? And what might some of that other stuff be?
Well, I think, definitely there's been an impact with Paul George just because the defensive flexibility he gives the team is the ability to guard a hot point guard or go down and get on a power forward if need be, and anyone in between. Certainly makes their defensive approach a little different. But really, from the start of the season, they had a rash of injuries up until about, the first of the year. And that, along with adding, obviously the lost Lance Stevenson, so you had TJ Miles and Rodney Stuckey, and both those guys were playing roles that they weren't brought into play because of the injuries, with George Hill missing time and C.J. Watson missing time and David West. And so it took a while for everyone to figure out how to play together, incorporate the new guys, and then kind of find the right role for them. And the improved play of late, has been because everyone's been back healthy. They figured out how to use Rodney Stuckey, and they've been able to, find some success that way. But, they definitely miss Paul George, and it seems like, I feel like their ceiling is they've kind of reached it during this latest stretch of play, and without Paul George, I don't think they're going to go that far.
Now, a lot of people here in Cleveland look at the Pacers and they see that possible 2-7 matchup if the Pacers keep winning and the Cavaliers stay in that 2 seed. And they're not real comfortable with it. Not necessarily that they believe the Pacers can beat the Cavaliers, but they believe the Pacers could give the Cavaliers a very difficult opening round series. What do you think of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I tend to agree. I don't know what it is about LeBron-James, but he brings out the best in the Pacers and really in Frank Vogel, the way they attack. He's always had his team up and ready to, with a great game plan to play against LeBron. And he's brought out the best in LeBron at times, too, and he's beaten him. And that's fantastic for everyone to watch. It's, it's been some years here of frustration at the end, but I think the team would love to have that shot, and it would certainly be an interesting matchup But right now, they're fighting to get back up into that spot and get things going in the right direction to make that happen.
All right, Tom Lewis joining me from Indy Cornrows. Tom, where can people find you?
Indycornrows.com is the website, and you can also find me on Twitter at IndyCornrows and Facebook, facebook.com/IndyCornrows. Pretty easy to find.
All right, great. Appreciate the time. Thanks, Tom.
All right, thank you. Bye.
See, told you I'd be back with Chris Fedor. Here he is. All right, Chris, you want to do a little fact or fiction?
Let's do it.
All right, fact or fiction. Kevin Love is healthy.
Fiction. I think at this point in the season, it's easy to say that a lot of guys are unhealthy, but Kevin Love more so. Look, he's dealt with an eye injury, and I think his back is more of a problem than he's leading on. I have no problem with him saying that he's 100% healthy, but if you watch his movements, if you see him in pregame warm-ups, look, back spasms are the kind of injury, Dan, that can just pop up out of nowhere, and that's what makes it so difficult. They're unpredictable. There is no timetable, and I don't think he's 100%. He's probably not going to be 100% for the rest of the year.
Does David Blatt need to sit him down for a little while?
That would be fact, because I think one of the advantages that the Cavs have going into the postseason is good health. It's funny because David Blatt continues to bring up Anderson Varejao and how much that injury has impacted the Cavs. But if you look around at some of the championship contenders, the Cavs are probably the most healthy team. You got Golden State dealing with Klay Thompson missing the next week. Atlanta's been playing without Thabo Sefolosha, and Kyle Korver now has a broken nose. Of course, everybody knows what's happening in Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant hasn't been close to 100% for a long stretch this year. The Pelicans have gone a stretch without Anthony Davis. The only major injury for the Cavs besides Varejao is LeBron resting for 2 weeks. But because they have the advantage of health right now, I think they have to hang on to that. I think they have to keep that advantage. And to me, the most important thing for the Cavs in the final 12 games of the regular season here, Dan, is to keep Love healthy, Irving healthy, LeBron healthy, because if they are healthy and rested going into a 7-game series, I'd take them against any team except for Atlanta, which I think that series would be a toss-up.
All right, the Cavs won a thriller against San Antonio last week. A lot of people thought it was maybe the game of the year up to this point. Fact or fiction, San Antonio is the scariest team out west.
I'll go with fiction because I think Golden State is too often overlooked here. And look, I'm not going to take anything away from San Antonio. San Antonio's getting healthy at the right time. They're playing their best basketball at the right time. They're battle-tested. They've got their own big three. They've got the best coach in the NBA. They've got a system that works in the playoffs. So, look, San Antonio is going to be a load for any team. But Golden State can't be overlooked here. They're going to have home court advantage, and they've lost 2 games all season long at Oracle Arena. They've got MVP candidate Steph Curry. They've got Klay Thompson. They're probably the deepest team in the NBA. They probably have the best starting 5 in the NBA, and they're beating teams by an average of 10 points. You don't just fluke your way into that. And as much as people talk about, they're just this jump shooting team, they can't really score inside, their system, the ball movement that they create, the passing, the body movement, that creates open looks inside. You don't have to have that big post player inside if you have Steph Curry driving to the basket, Andre Iguodala slashing, Harrison Barnes, Stephen Curry. There are a lot of different ways to get points in the paint. You don't just need that big body. And Golden State can win up-tempo, they can slow it down, they can win in the hundreds, they can win in the 90s. They're good offensively and defensively. I think too many people are overlooking the Warriors.
I just talked to Tom Lewis from my Indiana Pacers blog, IndyCornrows.com. Another team I want to ask about in the East, fact or fiction, the Miami Heat could drag the Cavaliers into a 6 or maybe 7-game series.
That is absolutely fact, Dan, yes. And it's for some of the same reasons that I look at when it comes to the Indiana Pacers. And one of the biggest things that Indiana has, Miami has, playoff experience. They're battle-tested. And it's not just that guys have been there. It's that guys have been there together. Mario Chalmers, Dwayne Wade, they've been there together. Udonis Haslem, Dwayne Wade, been there together. Indiana, same thing. For the Cavs, LeBron's been to the playoffs. Mike Miller's got that playoff experience, James Jones, but Kyrie hasn't been through that war with LeBron.
Yeah.
And Kevin Love hasn't been through that war ever. Or Tristan Thompson hasn't been through that war ever. I think when you see a core group of guys that have been through playoff wars together, that makes them dangerous. And of course, Eric Spoelstra, I think, would have the coaching advantage over David Blatt. He's been there, done that. This is a team in Miami that I thought was going to be very, very scary after making the trade for Goran Dragic. That was before the Chris Bosh scare. But still, they have a lot of firepower, and Dwayne Wade's playing like he turned back the clock recently.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Now, David Blatt talked about maybe stretching the NBA schedule out a little bit. There's been talk of maybe shortening the NBA schedule. Yeah, a lot of people like that 66-game format off that strike-shortened year. So fact or fiction, the NBA schedule as is too long.
I'd say that's fact. When you've got teams playing 4 games in 5 nights, and you've got a bunch of teams playing on back-to-backs, I do think it's too long. I understand why it's too long. It's all about the money, and you want to bring in that revenue, and you get 41 games at home, 41 on the road, and that's money right there. But I think the NBA has to do a better job balancing the health of the players, how long it takes them to recover from certain games. Nobody's going to sit here and tell you that it's football. But there still is a physicality to the game, and you've got guys diving all over the place and sacrificing their bodies. So it's a sport, it's a game that takes a lot out of you physically, and I just don't think that the NBA does a good enough job of finding a way to keep the players healthy while at the same time balancing trying to make money. Look at all the injuries right now, Dan. Yeah. It's not a good thing when you've got a lot of these guys missing some time because the season is so long.
Yeah, you play 82 games, get more than half the teams in the playoffs, and then if you go to the finals, you're playing another 20-plus games.
Yeah.
It's a lot of basketball.
Yes.
All right, Fact or Fiction is in the books. This guy had a chance to talk to Joe Vardon earlier. Here's what he had to say.
Joining me right now is Joe Vardon, our Cavs beat reporter. What's going on, Joe?
Hey, Chris, good to see you, man.
All right, so the Cavs have a game coming up against the Indiana Pacers, a team that could potentially be a first-round playoff matchup for the Cavs. David Blatt said recently that the Cavs are shooting for that number 2 seed. Do you think seeding is important for this Cavs team?
Yeah, I do. I think it is. I mean, it shouldn't be above the health of the players, and I am firmly in the corner of resting LeBron at least on both of their back-to-backs that they have remaining. There's 2 left. So, yeah, I think that a 2 seed would be good for them just because they are so dominant at home. You know, they've won the last 14 in a row there, and, you know, those are extra games that you get to play in the first and second rounds at minimum.
What kind of challenge do you expect the Indiana game to be? Now, you mentioned it is at home as opposed to Bankers Life Fieldhouse that has been a house of horrors for the Cavs. So being that the game is at home, it's a Friday night, it's against an Indiana team that has won 2 of 3 against the Cavs, what kind of challenge do you expect it to be?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, you don't know what to expect from the Pacers. I mean, I don't know. At this particular second, it doesn't look like Paul George is going to play. If he does, you don't know what he would be able to bring. But I think, Chris, because we're talking about the playoffs overall, let's look at it from that perspective. LeBron has a history of occasionally struggling against a team in the regular season and then dominating that team in the playoffs. He's done it to the Bulls. He's done it to the Pacers. He has, I'm trying to think, he's done it to the Celtics.
Yep.
Sometimes it was with the Cavs, and other times it was with the with the Heat. But he's been down this road before, and we actually talked to him about it today. And he just says, look, guys, it's just different. There's a different kind of energy that you bring in the playoffs than you do in the regular season. And that plays a lot into it. There's different things you do schematically. And it's just, there's just a different effort level. Like, if you have to imagine if LeBron is at his best against whoever at their best, you have to bet that LeBron's best is going to be a little better. Now, in the regular season, there's so many other factors. One team's on the second night of a back-to-back or on the 4th game in 5 nights or something like that. So many different things that kind of go into it or take away from you, depending on what side of the ledger you're on there. And so I can see that. So yeah, I mean, I'm on board with this being a big game tomorrow night, a statement game. But at the same time, I think from a Cavs perspective, you just have to keep in mind that what happens tomorrow makes almost no difference in what happens come April and May.
Yeah, Joe, I think that's a good point. Each game in the NBA is a different story, and we've kind of seen that here over the last month. Take the San Antonio game on Thursday night, and it was all Kyrie and all LeBron. And then if you go to the game against Brooklyn, it was 7 players in double figures. When it comes to the supporting cast, the guys around LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love, the guys not part of the big three, how much confidence do you have in those guys at the moment?
Well, right now, I have a lot of confidence in them. I really do. I mean, J.R. Smith has just been, well, I mean, if anyone, inside or outside of this building, speaking at the Cavs practice court, if anyone suspected that J.R. Smith would make this kind of impact when they traded for him the night you were in no man's land in Philadelphia, that night on January 5th, trying to cover the game and the trades, they'd be lying. There's just no way. There's no way that you would have foreseen this kind of impact from JR. Not only being a starter, but playing the kind of role that he's playing and playing it so well. We've talked about what he does over and over again. First, he's a catch and shooter. He can put it on the floor when he needs to, but he only does it when he needs to. He defends far better than anyone expected, and he has caused 0 problems in terms of chemistry in the locker room, off the floor, all of those things. And so you have to, then you add in his experience, and you have to think, yeah, he's someone to be confident in. I mean, Shumpert is an entirely different player than JR with a lot less experience, but, again, plays that kind of gritty defense that you want to see in the playoffs. Mozgov, gives you a lot. You would be concerned about his hands in the playoffs a little bit. But, what I mean is, everything's going to be in the half court. He's going to have to catch the ball in traffic, and that's hard for him to do. He did fine with it the other night, but, so those are the things you look for. But, yeah, you have to feel confident about that team right now.
Last thing here, Joe, really quick. Cavs 44-26, number 2 in the Eastern Conference, 12 games remaining in the regular season. What should the goal of the team be in the final month here?
Yeah, first and foremost, they have to get to, April 20th with LeBron and Kyrie standing upright and feeling good. That's the first thing. Because with those 2 guys, they're going to be a tough out with anyone in the playoffs. The second thing is they want to shore up some things defensively, and begin to take their defense to another level. They feel like they're good schematically. Now it's execution. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is just to get in the kind of rhythm where the ball moves at all times. And then finally, and this is maybe the most important thing, is, hey, you got to get Kevin Love rolling. We've been talking about it all year. You and I talked the other night. We like how he played against Brooklyn, but let's get more of that. That's what I think they're looking at here.
All right, Joe Vardon, our Cavs beat reporter. Thanks so much for the time, Joe.
Anytime.
All right, Cavs Insider is done. Tom Lewis joined us. Joe Vardon joined us. We did Fact or Fiction. Cavs play the Pacers Friday.
Yep.
Then they get kicked out of their building for a little while. The NCAA regional tournament coming to Quicken Loans Arena, so they hit the road. They've got Memphis.
Yep.
They also have Brooklyn on the road, Milwaukee. It's not a super hard road trip. You throw Memphis in there, that makes it tough, but still a couple winnable games.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you look at that Brooklyn win, and you saw what the Cavs were able to do against Brooklyn on Wednesday night, and you feel like, okay, even if the Cavs do go on the road, that's the kind of opponent that the Cavs can beat. But I'm looking at a couple of matchups here. I'm looking at Milwaukee, I'm looking at Memphis, and I'm looking at Indiana, simply because the Cavs, Dan, struggle with good defensive teams. Teams in the top 15 defensively. Those are the only teams that have beaten the Cavs over the last 30-plus games. They revert back to some bad habits. The ball sticks, a lot of hero ball. I want to see how the Cavs handle those tough defensive teams, especially on the road.
Milwaukee's got a lot of wingspan on that team.
Man, it's
Tell
like
you what.
it's like trying to score offensively playing against an octopus. Their arms are just all over the place in the passing lanes, at the rim. It's ridiculous how long that team is.
I want to see that. We've heard of donkey basketball. I want to see some octopus basketball. All right, again, my thanks to Tom Lewis, also Joe Vardon. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe.